Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Katie and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. This is the summer holiday version in Arlene's house because the kids are done school. So it's a whole new world. The routine has changed. I'm not sure when people are getting up or when they're eating or any of those things, but people seem to be, like waking and sleeping at, hours. And there's food being consumed because the kitchen gets dirty, and then I tell people to clean it up, and then it gets clean again. So, summer holidays, they're here. Katie, what is going on in Iowa these days?
We just got home last night. We took a mini vacation to the Twin Cities to go to the Minnesota Zoo.
Nice.
It was great. We went up, stayed overnight, stayed in a hotel, went swimming in a pool. The girl child, of course, made 6 new best friends because that's who she is. We're going to have a bit of a chat because she apparently told one of her new best friends our room number so that said little friend could, stop by.
Oh, perfect.
The said little friend was another little girl about the same age, but I think it's maybe time to start more intentionally pursuing street smarts.
Sure, yeah.
Incredibly outgoing and friendly small town child.
Or even some hotel smarts.
Yeah, a little.
Yeah, you can be friends at the pool and in the breakfast lounge, but that's going to be it for now.
Yeah. And then yesterday, so Sunday, we went to the Minnesota Zoo, which was super cool, except that we drove the 3 hours up there, planned this whole trip to see the red pandas, which are a new thing at the zoo. The boy child was beyond excited. I will leave it to our listeners to guess how many motherfucking red pandas were actually sighted.
Was there one sleeping or 0?
0 red pandas were seen in close to 7 hours of 90 plus degree heat and 8,000% humidity.
Right. Yeah. So go see other animals and then loop back to the pandas. Was that the route that you kept taking?
Still 0 pandas.
How big was the enclosure?
Well, it wasn't that big until I realized that there was a gate open to a building, which is presumably air conditioned.
Right, and probably where the pandas were hanging out.
Blah, blah, blah. Don't even, at me about animal welfare and them not dying of heat. I get it.
Just shoo them out for a few minutes.
There is no sadness like the sadness of a 7-year-old boy who has been so good all day, just on the promise of red pandas. And then there are no red pandas.
Were there any other animals that were cute enough to at least help the red panda sorrel?
Hilariously, the favorite animal? Llamas and guinea pigs, both of which can easily be seen either in our home or within 20 miles of our home.
Yes. And your sheep are basically just like llamas with short legs because they look very similar.
Yeah, the cool part about the Minnesota Zoo llama experience is that it is uncontained, shall we say. I mean, they are in an enclosure, but they are not restricted from access to humans.
Right, yeah, you can go into where they are.
Yeah, well, they have their own space, so humans have to stay on the path, but llamas do not have to stay on the grass, which means that llamas will do things like just laying down in the middle of the path.
Right.
Or taking over the guinea pig building, which was kind of cracked me up that my kids were so excited to see guinea pigs, considering that we have 3 of them at home.
Yeah, they could hang out in the room where the guinea pigs are if they wanted to.
But it was a good trip, and it was very hard to get them up for daycare this morning. I'll tell you that. They were not interested in being awake. Other than that, There's some new exciting tick-borne disease that's been found in Iowa in cattle,
Ooh, exciting, and ticks really go well together.
some sort of like Asian long-horned tick or some damn thing that carries some new disease that I had never heard of. But apparently these ticks are like super aggressive and the disease is super aggressive and there's like, no treatment and you and your entire family and all of your cows will die or something.
Oh, perfect.
We just got a letter from the vet about it. So there's that.
Well, that's fun. Because the other ticks didn't impact cows, right?
The upside, for me at least, of the zoo excursion was that there were fruit bats, which anyone who knows me knows how that went. I.e., I'm pretty proud of myself that I'm not still there looking at the fruit bats and that I did indeed come home with my family. But also, I got a real moment of talking to a lovely zookeeper about what their fly control protocol is for things like when you have a zoo full of caribou and moose and things of that nature. And I mean, obviously, visitors don't want to see these flies, and the animals don't want to see these flies, and the zookeepers don't want to see these flies. And I am fairly certain I'm the first person who had asked any of the zookeepers about fly control methods for caribou.
Did you get any tips for those of us who have fly issues? Because we don't live in zoos, but we live on farms.
Chemicals, more chemicals, and then we had a delightful discussion about what it involves to train all these animals to come up and be okay with being sprayed with fly spray. Oh, also, apparently, moose secrete some sort of oil into their fur that makes them less delightful for biting insects.
Oh, well, that's helpful. Because moose do tend to hang out in places with a lot of bugs.
Yeah, yeah, and they tend to like water a lot themselves. Sounded like it was a fairly broad spectrum approach
Of different types of chemicals. Yeah, that makes sense.
of chemicals and fans and mechanical means and oilers, and I bet the fly problem at a zoo is substantial. I never really thought about it.
Probably, yeah. Because there's also a lot of like fruit and rotting stuff. Like you have to leave the gross food out for the animal, well, fruit bats and others to eat, right? So you got to have lots of stuff sitting out there too.
And Minnesota in the summer is a insect heavy environment. Let's put it that way.
Yes, I imagine it's fairly similar to where I live. Lots of lakes, lots of places for mosquitoes and black flies to breed.
How are things at your place, Arlene?
Well, things are good. I think I mentioned last week we were getting some more hay done. So we finished first cut and started second cut back to back. I think maybe even on the same day, just because of the type of grass that we're growing in different fields. The second cut was some new seeding. And so it had been the very first of the first cut that got done. And anyway, hay people know about all that kind of stuff. So we ended up actually getting a contractor to come in and do it up in silage and bag it for us because my husband was looking at the forecast and couldn't figure out a way to get it all done and keep his sanity at the same time. So as much as he's not going to enjoy paying the bill, having it all in plastic and put away is worth it for us in this moment. So we have a small reprieve at this moment, I think, for maybe a few days where we don't have to do hay, and the storms will do what they're going to do because it's humid, and then there might be thunderstorms, or there might not, or it might rain on that field and not that field, and so you can't predict it. And I had back-to-back adventures this week. So on one day I went whitewater rafting, which is something I haven't done since pre-kids, and it's one of those like both exciting and terrifying type activities. There are definitely moments where you think you might die, but the fact that they like have multiple boats of people going through these rapids every day, and it's not like I'm hearing about like people literally drowning all the time. It must be actually safe enough, but it is very scary.
Or they've gotten real good at covering it up.
Yes, yeah, exactly. I mean, we did sign a very lengthy waiver. Yeah, so that was exciting. So it was a kind of a combo of family members, my brother-in-law and one of my nephews, myself and my 14-year-old. He was the bravest of the kids who was willing to try it, and the youngest wasn't quite old enough yet, although I'm not sure that he would have gone for it anyway. I think it was probably best he didn't accompany us. And then another nephew from my sister's family and his girlfriend. So it was a fun day. The day that we had scheduled and planned for, like weeks ahead was one of the coldest and rainiest we've had in a long time. So earlier in the week, of course, it was sweltering hot. The day we went whitewater rafting, it was so cold we were shivering in our boat, but it was still an adventure. So yeah, it was fun. Yeah, I think I'm probably good for a few years though. I got enough water like up my nose and in my ears and, and all the parts of my body that I think I'm good for a little while. And then the next day I went to another puzzle competition. So like the thrills are just like off the charts these days. So my sister and I went to a speed puzzling event in Ottawa, which was not too far away, and we actually won. So that was exciting too. And we got
Well, congrats.
yeah, and the community center where the puzzling competition was also has a used bookstore. So we also got some books. So, I mean, like puzzles and books and whitewater rafting all in like a 24-hour period. I think I'm good for the summer. So, I'll just like hang out on the porch now and read books.
We do really lead an exciting life, Arlene.
It is thrills all around.
Mail today, I received a new pair of overalls with Highland cows printed all over them, and a book I had ordered quite a while ago about a lady botanist, shall we say, slash intrepid gardener from the 1800s who was apparently rumored slash well known, I haven't read the book yet, obviously, to carry thistle seeds in the pockets of her gowns for seeding other people's gardens with, which is just, that's some serious girl boss energy, I think. You
Yeah,
know,
that's
so
right. Yeah.
yeah, we're very exciting people.
You don't want to invite her over to your garden parties because your gardens are going to be a mess.
Don't get on her bad side.
Yeah, that's right. Well, on the note of all that excitement, why don't we go ahead and introduce our guest for this week?
Sounds good.
Are you a farmer or butcher ready to master direct-to-consumer marketing and meet success?
The team at ChopLocal is standing by ready to help. Sell your meat on the ChopLocal marketplace. Check out all their free meat marketing educational resources at ChopLocal University. Hire the team to help you out or tune into their new podcast called Meat Success.
And remember, there's more than one recipe for meat success. Let us help you fine-tune yours today at ChopLocalUniversity.com. Today, we are excited to be talking to Calli Thorne, who's joining us from North Dakota. So we get to cross another state off of our list, which is exciting for us. Our map is definitely getting filled up, Calli. So thank you for joining us.
No, I'm glad I saw that.
Yeah, and we always start our interviews with the exact same question. So every guest gets to answer this one, and it's what are you growing? So usually for our farmers and ranches, that's crops and livestock and those types of things, but can also cover kids and businesses and anything else, your own personal characteristics, whatever you want to tell us about. So Calli, what are you growing?
Man, that is a very loaded question because I could answer about 10,000 different things, probably, as could everybody else. But when I think about what I'm growing, I really think I'm growing minds, like brains. I think I'm working to expand not just mine, but other people. When I come into contact with people, we're working on leadership or mental health or even when you're an entrepreneur and you farm and ranch or you have other businesses going on too, I think you're just constantly growing minds. And to people who are parents, right, you're always growing and shaping those little minds that are in your house too. And so I think that is a constant. Every day there's some sort of learning or training or growing going on, and I think that makes a huge difference for people when they're willing to keep learning and growing.
Absolutely. So, on the farm or ranch side of things, can you tell us what you are doing when it comes to working the land and animals?
Yeah, people who know me, they kinda laugh when others ask me that question because it's a loaded question. We've got a lot going on. My kids are 5th generation on our operation. So we've got cow-calf operation, backgrounding feedlot. Sometimes we're running some yearlings. We also feed for a lot of other people too up in our backgrounding feedlot. So sometimes it's our own animals up there, sometimes it's a mix, sometimes we're developing heifers for other people. So a lot of different things going on at home. And then we're often, when it comes to the farming side, it seems like more and more as of lately, it's kind of comes down to putting up feed for our own animals. So when I was younger, I mean, we did all the things wheat, oats, barley, a variety of things, but now we're planting a lot more corn, which we're turning into silage or grain for the feedlot animals. We put up a lot of hay throughout the summer as well, because in the feedlot, we can have up to 1,000 head on the home place then throughout the winter and stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the farm and ranch side, and the kids are involved, and we've got a lot of different directions we're going. But then I also do a lot of different speaking, training, leadership type stuff. So I'm hitting the road as well, whether it's traveling for different organizations and speaking to their teams or their companies or whatever it might be. And then I also do mental health first aid training, so providing that as well. So kind of, yeah, a lot of different avenues that we head. And then, of course, how can I miss? We run a USDA federally inspected beef plant in a nearby town. We bought that about a year ago. And so just thought we would really take it full scale farm to fork and add one more giant thing to our plate.
That sounds like a very full plate. Before we go too much further on the kid side of things, what ages are we talking about? People always like to know if we're in similar stages and ages.
Right now, my oldest is Tylee, and she is 13. And then I've got a boy in the middle, Kason. He's 11 years old. And my spunky third child, Lainey, she is 7 right now.
Right, yeah, so we've got a range. Now, I know that talking about size and scale is tricky, but to give context, the way you were talking, it sounds like maybe this is your family in terms of the generations.
Yeah, I always a lot of times when I'm talking to people, I do point that out because it seems like a lot of times you hear of the husband, the wife moves to his place, but it was different for us. My husband is from South Dakota, and he saw the big oil boom, of course, happening in our area, 15, 20 years ago, which seems like eons ago now. But he saw that happening up in Western North Dakota. And so he moved from South Dakota once he graduated up to our area. So we are on my home place. It was actually fun story. As the story goes, they say that my great grandpa had bought the land originally and then he gifted it to my grandpa. And so we live in the house that I grew up in, and then it was originally built by my grandpa. So yeah, lots of history on that land, and my kids are the 5th generation there now on it.
Right. And so are there other family members involved as well? Because like we said, it sounds like there's a lot of different things going on. So I'm assuming it's not just your family that are keeping all the balls in the air.
We need a little backup. Yeah, no, we're fortunate. My mom and dad live about 3 miles from us. So they moved off the place when we took over there, kind of. So they're 3 miles away. Like we take some of their cows on share. My dad does a ton of chores for us. If we have to be up at the beef plant a lot of days, he's choring for us. So it's definitely a team effort. My mom is, if she needs to be seating in the tractor or needs to come help work cattle, she does that as well with us. And then I do have a younger brother, and they live, him and his wife and my little nephew, they live about less than 10 minutes away from us, is where they built a place. So they're often, and this is kind of funny, and I do always say it though with sincere honesty, I think we all work pretty well together because we run separate businesses. So none of us are tied into each other. Like my husband and I have the feedlot, we have our own cows, we do our own butcher shop, all that. Like that's our thing. My brother actually runs registered Red Angus, and like that's his thing. My mom and dad have their cattle, and maybe we take some on shares, like I said, but 3 different bank accounts so we can make our own decisions and what we want to do. But I will tell you, we are very fortunate that we all work well together. So if somebody needs help with something, working animals or seeding or haying, I mean, we're a team effort there.
Right. Yeah. A team with a little bit of separation is sometimes a good thing.
Yep.
Kelly, I have to say, as someone who's got some friends going through some serious drama with family farm, I think that separate operations and separate bank accounts is the way to go, even if you are working together. Mostly because someone is in charge and there is no question as to who that person is. And that can really bring out, I'm sure it can bring out the best of family dynamics, but it definitely brings out the worst in family dynamics when there's any friction around that roles and transition in life.
Oh yeah, I hear countless stories, and they're usually not good stories, right? I mean, that you hear. And I've had conversations with family members. I mean, I do some coaching on the side, plus I do a lot on, like we've talked, communication, behavioral styles, and it can be very tricky when there's, right, multiple bosses. And it's, you about have to all know and understand communication, or there's a lot of families that I see that are very challenged because they either don't have the conversations, or they feel challenged and somebody's always mad at somebody, and it can make it pretty sticky. So as much as I joke about it, I sincerely mean it is one of the best things that we have done for our relationships and our businesses, is to run them all. Hey, this is CJ and I's. This is Blake and Whitney's. This is my mom and dad's. Because then you get to call the shots, and it's on you then, personal responsibility. And if you need my help with something, I'm happy to talk, or I'm happy to help work cattle, whatever it might be. But I think it personally makes it easier.
So you said it was just about a year ago that you entered into that new business. Was it something that was for sale or something that you sought out?
Always a good question. So since about 2020, when COVID hit, we started selling a lot more beef off of our place. To make a long story short, when COVID hit, we're like, hey, my husband has a lot of good intuition and follows his gut. And he said, I think we need to start selling beef. When the packers obviously weren't processing cattle, feedlots were getting backed up. There was no beef on the grocery store shelves. And so it was kind of like, hey, here's an opportunity, and which is a lot of our mindset. I say that is one of the biggest things that has helped my husband and I, is how we view things. Just, I feel like a lot of times, generation after generation, you get in this mindset of, this is how it's always done, or when there's no rain, then this is a problem. And it's like, if that's how we see it, man, it's going to be a tough life in agriculture. So we've worked really hard on, okay, everybody else is thinking, woe is me. Instead, I'm going to think, man, there's got to be opportunity here. We're going to have to pivot, and it might be hard, but just because it's hard doesn't mean it's wrong. That's one thing I always say, especially to kids and young people. It's like, just because it's hard doesn't mean you're doing the wrong thing. Keep at it. So COVID hits, we're looking for opportunity. And so we started selling beef. A lot of the cattle that we were processing, we were doing at a beef plant up in Williston, North Dakota, and that's about an hour from our ranch. And they were one of the very few USDA federally inspected plants. So we knew we could get in there and we could obviously sell it. We had our retail license. So fast forward, it was the fall of 2023 then, and the owners of that beef plant were actually from Oregon, and they were just ready to move on to the next thing. And they reached out to us, to my husband and I, because we obviously used them so much to process our own cattle. They asked if we'd be interested. And to make a really long story short, it's kind of one of those, no, we weren't looking for it, but it kind of fell into our lap. We've actually got a neighbor like a mile from us that we asked if they'd be interested in partnering with us. And so we went in together and ended up buying it, which it has a roller coaster. That is a great way that I describe it to people. It's pretty fun and unique to say we are truly full farm to fork, pasture to plate, whatever you want to call it, and can market beef. But it's also been wildly challenging because of beef prices this whole entire last year. We joked when we bought it. We said, like, okay, cattle prices, I mean, they've got to come down some. And we get to see both ends. So it's been great on the ranch. But I think a lot of people don't comprehend how hard that is then on the other end at the butcher shop. I mean, it's challenging us majorly, and prices have only gone up since we bought it a year ago. So it's been a roller coaster, lots of highs and lows.
Right, yeah. Good for farmers, not so much for the people who are buying and processing. So, in terms of, I guess, maybe percentages, how much of your own beef is going through that plant versus other people's?
It varies week to week. Oh, I'm trying to remember, because we do custom processing for ranchers. So they are bringing us cattle. Golly, I asked my husband that not recently, not too long ago either, about what those numbers were. And I can't quite remember if it's half and half, or Maybe a few more are custom processing for local ranchers, but a big chunk of it still is we do have a retail space in there. So people are coming in and buying individual cuts that are either fresh or just recently frozen, or they're buying quarters, halves, and wholes from us still at the butcher shop. So a good mix of both.
And was there a good number of the staff that came with that purchase? Like, did you have much turnover in terms of the people who were working there?
Yeah, thankfully we had a team when we bought the place. We got to keep them. There's been a little bit of turnover, making some changes as we bought it and added on some people. We probably have close to a dozen people, and most all of them are full time except for maybe a couple. So we have a pretty good team, and thankfully, I mean, some of them have 30 years experience there. So they definitely have what we did not have coming in on that end of it. Of it's like, hey, I actually have a degree in animal science and we farm and ranch and all those things. However, I don't know how to cut beef, and I should go back to meat science.
Unless it's on my plate, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Callie, that's a question I actually had because we were direct marketing beef and lamb when the pandemic started and got to the point that our local locker was 2.5 years out for processing dates for inspected meat, which I can't book a steer that isn't born yet, and I definitely can't book lambs that aren't going to be born for 2 more years. And I absolutely understand it from their end of things. And a lot of it for them was not having the worker capacity. So I'm wondering, what you're doing to get ahead of that curve with folks who've got 30 years of experience. Meat cutting is hard, like physically hard work. And I know, they said there aren't a lot of high school kids that are coming out of school going, I really want to be a butcher, which is unfortunate. I think it's probably in that long list of jobs that aren't presented as possibilities. But I'm wondering what your thoughts are on how we get ahead of things. Like, what do we do about the fact that nobody's going into butchery? I mean, obviously people are, but not near what we're going to need for covering that scale.
Right. That's what I keep saying. It's not a job for the faint of heart. I mean, when you look at it full scale and you see the entire process, right? It's not for everybody, let alone the physically demanding job. Like you said, we're pretty fortunate, and I don't know if part of that is because we're here in North Dakota and we're oil field, we're agriculture, we're construction. We have that work ethic as part of it. But I will also say we're struggling in this area too. I mean, you can go to any store in any of these towns and they're looking for work, looking for help. And so then if there's a lot of opportunities, who wants to come work at a butcher shop, right? And I think one thing that we've worked really hard on, and I'm not saying it's paying off yet, but I guess I hope so. The prior owners were rarely around. Like I said, they were from Oregon, they weren't there, and their focus was exports, global exports. And so we've completely flipped around what we're trying to do, and we want to push local beef. Ranchers, come get processed with us. Hey, consumers, come buy beef from us. If you want fresh, literally the best fresh local sourced beef, we're in town. And so coming back to that, then I think part of that is being able to build a good team culture. And I've actually had some of the employees that we have right now say, and I think people don't always realize this or recognize it, but they're like, when you never see the owners walk in, or you never get to have a conversation with them, or you don't get to see them put a white coat and hairnet on and get to work, it kind of can change the morale, and I'm not saying that's always supposed to be the owner's job. I mean, truthfully, owners try and work hard that's not what they have to be doing, but we like to, and we like to be there, and we like to have conversation with our employees and see what's going on. And so I think part of that, they have been very good, our current employees, of putting bugs in other people's ears. People hear, hey, I used to work at that butcher shop and I hear they've got new owners. I hear it's a pretty good place to work, a great environment. Maybe I'll go check it out. And so we actually have that happening this week. Even we have a former employee before we owned it that's coming back to check it out, and they've got connections in these towns. If a restaurant was closing, which happened recently, one of our employees knew a gal that worked there. She's been working for us now. We hired her recently and she's been phenomenal. And I also think we're pretty fortunate, I will say, in this oil boom area. We have what's called a Bakken Area Skills Center. And so we're pretty unique in our area where we do have kids. They're still right doing 4-H, FFA, all of those things, but there's ag classes. And there's this, it's almost like a, it's not quite a college, but you can go there and do furthering education. You can possibly even get certificates. So there are a lot of kids that are getting maybe their CNA or they're getting welding certificates. And they've also got some neat science classes. And so we had some of those kids, they actually got, I can't remember if they got a quarter of beef from us, and they have a mobile meats lab. And they were learning how to cut it, how to make sausage, do all of that. And I say it jokingly, but I'm not joking when I'm like, hey, you kids, when you're done and you're looking for a job, come find us because we've got a good environment, good or bad when you're the owner, but we've got competitive pay for being in the oil field. We have to compete. And I mean, for us personally, we have to offer insurance too, which I know a lot of them don't or can't. But I guess if we want employees, we have to be able to offer those things in our area. So.
Well, and I think, too, from an employee standpoint, even if the boss isn't, elbows deep in a steer with you, knowing that they know your name if they walk through the door or that you would recognize them if they walked through the door is huge because, there's definitely a time and a place for the owner to just get out of the way and let employees do their work. But it does help a lot if they know who you are and, you feel appreciated.
Well, and I think I'm very big on that anyways when it just comes to communication and caring about people. I mean, it's pretty simple things. And I probably know more and more about that because of some of my trainings, whether it's John Maxwell leadership stuff or it's mental health. It's sometimes if you want to keep an employee for a long time and you're genuine about it, all you need to do is ask, hey, how was your weekend? Or hey, I know you've had a lot on your plate, how are things going? And just pulling them aside, having those conversations and check-ins can make a world of difference. And I also think it's not just for the employees. I mean, I know I can't, but I also wish I could be up here every day and see every customer that comes through the door, to be able to thank them, because when you're a small business owner and you've got like a lot on the line, it's you're so appreciative of every single person, an employee that shows up for work, how much I appreciate that, right? And customers that walk through the door that make the drive. We're a little bit off the beaten path just because obviously we're butchering and we don't need to be right in town. Our plant has actually been where it's located for several decades. So people know that it exists, but it's also exploded recently with the oil boom. And because the owners were doing exporting more, I think people kind of forgot we existed for a few years. So we're really trying to grow that. And I know when people got across the railroad tracks and come back where we're located, I mean, I appreciate it so much as an owner.
So we've touched on this already in our conversation, but the one thing that came up for me when I was looking at your bio before this interview was the idea of talking about conflict resolution. And I know for a lot of us, we're raising kids, we're potentially working with family, but even if you're not working with family, you're working with other people, and conflict is inevitable. I'm definitely a conflict avoider. I know that about myself. So I was thinking that's one topic that we haven't really covered all that much on our podcast yet. So I was wondering if you could talk to us and our listeners a little bit about the ways that people can approach conflict and think about conflict in everyday life.
Yeah, good question. It's funny. I think I actually spoke one time at an event and we were talking a little bit on different behavioral styles and communication. And it was a agricultural group. And so obviously I told a lot of our family stories and stuff. And I had to laugh when I got done because I went out in the hallway and one of the guys greeted me. And the first thing he said was, so does your family get along all the time? And I just laughed. I was like, nope, nope. I don't think that is a reality for anybody. Even if I've got training in it and I go work with other teams and companies, it doesn't mean it's perfect at home in my place. And I think that's what people have to, number one, realize is you have to be able to talk about it. Or, I mean, I shouldn't say that you have to, or your other option is to not talk about it and avoid it and try and sweep it under the rug.
But it's still there. That's the thing. I think avoiding conflict or not having conflict isn't a goal that is achievable for us, right? Like we are humans, and there will be conflict. So yeah, how do we manage it?
and it's not going to go away if we don't talk about it at all. So I think that's one of the number one things is you have to recognize that it's there, but be willing to talk about it, to have the conversation. And I think sometimes it's more in our own minds than anything else. And I've definitely learned that we always have the thought of, well, this is how this person's going to react, or this is what they're going to say, or it's not even worth having a conversation with them. But you will never know the actual answer unless you have a conversation. And I think that's much of what I do a lot of coaching, like one-on-one coaching with people too, which I always tell people I'm not a therapist, I'm not a counselor, although people like to talk to me about a plethora of things. I often, as a coach, what I get to do is give them a couple different perspectives or show them, like, hey, have you ever thought about this? Or I just can ask many, many questions to help them find the right answers and the solution and stuff, because if you don't want to talk to them about the problem, that's fine. That's okay. But realize, like, this is the path that it will take you down then. And does it make you feel any better? Does it make the situation any better if we're not willing to have the conversation? The second part is really recognizing what's the approach that I'm taking. If especially if we're in agriculture and it happens to be a family member and we are in business together, and it's like, oh, well, I know how they're going to react. It's better off not even having the conversation. But you have to treat a business like a business, and things have to be decided upon. And I think how you approach the situation can make a huge difference. And unfortunately, a lot of times we talk to family maybe in ways that we wouldn't talk to other people. And so just thinking about that, it's like, I always joke about working cattle. It's like, you wouldn't go to any office and see people talking to each other like this, right? So I'm going to walk away. If you're not able to talk to me like a decent human when I'm out here trying to help you, I'm done. I don't have to show up. And I think people laugh about that and stuff, but it's just a reality of you get to say yes and no to the things that you want to. And so, what's your tone? What's your approach? Is it more attacking, or are we slowing down and saying, hey, I've got something that we need to probably talk about, and it's on my mind, and it's probably been on your mind, and I know we need to make some decisions. And so I actually do. Have you guys heard of DISC before? DISC?
I don't think so.
Okay, so it's like a behavioral style assessment, and it's a training that I provide. It is phenomenal. It's a ton of fun, and people are usually laughing throughout it because they recognize what their disc style is, but they're also realizing what everybody else's is that they work with, or it's a spouse or their kids or coworkers. And so it really has to do with, okay, am I more dominant? Like, is that how I show up? And it's like, I'm just goal focused and let's rock and roll. But then you're also going to have other people who maybe they're just quieter and they're really loyal and they don't like a lot of change. And so if you always show up in your dominant trait to somebody who's maybe more quiet, the conversation might not go well. And so, as hard as this is, I always tell people, what's the saying? Treat others the way that you want to be treated, right? Great saying. However, if I'm kind of a dominant person and I like to rock and roll and get things done, I maybe come across kind of like harsh even sometimes. I can't talk to maybe my mom like that if she's not that behavioral style. I can. It's a choice because sometimes people will be like, well, it's great. So you're supposed to change who you are just to get along with people. And I'm like, I'm not saying change who you are, but just change your approach in your conversation or your communication with them. And they're like, well, I don't want to. I'm like, well, how's that working out for you right now? It's not working well. It always ends in a fight because you are so dominant or you're threatening or you're not willing to hear another person's side of the story. In fact, that can happen a lot of times with detailed people. They want to do such a good job, they maybe just don't speak up or they ask for details, and that ends up annoying somebody else. And it's like, they're not trying to be annoying, they just want to do a good job for you. But they don't realize that. And so there's so much tied into conflict management, resolution, communication. And I think, especially if we're talking agriculture or businesses, people aren't trained in that. You do your own training, and a lot of times all we have time for is work, it seems like.
So this is one. My kids are 7 and 8, and as I said, they're here today at home. I don't want to say anything to jinx it, but as the day goes on, I would really love your advice on how to help children deal with conflict. I am also an only child, and so I did not grow up with this I grew up with a friend who was very much like a sibling, but she always had the option to just go home if we got too much at each other's throats. What can you tell us about, especially as we're looking at, hopefully our kids will, even if they don't want to stay on a farm, I would really like to encourage them to not hate each other by adulthood. So how do we foster that? Because the farm is a very different dynamic than a lot of kids grow up with. And knowing that our family, I think, does a relatively okay job of communicating, but also I don't want our kids growing up thinking that the communication they see in a lot of households in our area is a normal and reasonable way to treat people. Let's put it that way.
I laugh because my first thought that came to mind was, if my kids are fighting or I'm tired of listening to them because they're too loud, I send them outside and I'm like, I'll put a sign on the door when you're welcome back in the house. Otherwise, get outside. I'm tired of listening to it, but that doesn't always solve problems, right? I think one of the big things that I have had to work on, and I can definitely tell you I have matured in this because I've just noticed it more. And in fact, I still remember this. This was years ago when we had very little kids, and a very good friend of mine was telling me that her kids were playing and they had their little babies they were carrying around in strollers and their purses. And the older sister, she's maybe 2 years older than her other sister. And again, this is my friend telling me about watching her girls at home. And she said, I was standing in the kitchen, I was watching them play. And one of them said to the other one, she's like, hurry up, grab your stuff. We have to go. Get the baby. Do you have the diaper bag? Do you have our phone? We have to get in the car. We're running late. And she was just in a tizzy. This is like probably a 4 and 2-year-old playing house, right? And she said, I just sat there and I looked at them and realized, holy cow, where do they get that from? Right? It's me. That's how I run around the house and act. It's just one thing to the next, and we're hurrying and hustling. And I think that for me, I realized that then later on. I think there's such an awareness piece. It's a basic question. How do I get my kids to get along? Well, number one, let's start with awareness. How am I showing up? And you've talked about this just a little bit, but I think so much of it is, how am I talking to them? And I'm not always nice and calm. And it's like, wait a second, then the next day I can see my oldest talking to the 2 youngest. And I'm like, whoa, you don't need to. I said, even if they're not listening, even if they're not helping, they're doing something wrong, you cannot talk to them that way. I said, you wouldn't talk to anybody else like that. So what makes you think you can talk to them that way? And this is the voice I have to use. It's slower. It's calmer. I'm noticing, am I always like that? Nope. But I definitely watch it. And I think the big thing is, if I can get them, I'll pull them and make them sit down and just talk it through. And I think I have to be that example of, what's that conversation look like? Am I like losing it and being hyper and yelling at them and this and that, versus let's sit down. How did we get here, you guys? What seems to be the issue? And then I can hear both sides. We can communicate it. We can solve it. Because if kids can't do that now, or they're not learning those tools, they're not going to be able to figure it out when they get a job either, because there's going to be issues. I mean, that's one of the biggest things I teach, both in leadership and mental health, is life's 50-50. It's going to be hard and challenging and sad and frustrating, and it's going to be fun and enjoyable and great. But if kids don't know how to handle both sides, especially the hard, then they're going to give up. They'll quit a job because they don't like somebody or don't get along with them. And so I think that's a really big piece. But kind of leading off what you mentioned too, Katie, is I think that they're watching us a ton. I always say more is caught than is taught. I can tell my kids, you need to treat others nicely. You need to talk kindly to other people. But if I don't model that when I'm talking to them, or when I'm talking to my husband, or when we're out with my family or with people in the community, they are constantly watching us. And that's how they're actually learning.
Podcasts are free to listen to, but they aren't free to create. Katie and I would appreciate your support as we work to build the Barnyard Language community.
Patreon is an easy way for you to make a contribution that goes directly to making the show. As a member of our Patreon community, you get to watch the video version of our weekly updates, complete with questionable hairstyles and clutter. With 3 levels of support, you can choose a tier that works for you.
Keep the podcast going by becoming a patron today at patreon.com/barnyardlanguage.
I know our little boy, thankfully we live in a small farm town with teachers who are incredibly patient and, incredibly under resourced and underpaid. But I got a report home that my dear baby had said something that was not a terrible swear, but was not appropriate for the first grade classroom. And I had to report back to his teacher that if he didn't sound quite so much like me when he said it, it might have been easier to deny where he heard it. Because she said something about, oh, he probably heard it from Grandpa out in the farmyard. And I was like, no, no, he's mommy's boy.
With your exact intonation and everything.
Which I'm reminded of because it got muttered again this morning from my precious little angel baby. And I will admit that the rushing, especially, is easily my worst tendency when interacting with my kids. And that's actually why they're home today, is I let them sleep in this morning because we had a busy weekend and it got to be time to leave and they were both just out. And I was like, you know what? I'll let them sleep in. I'll just take them to daycare before the interview. And then I fell asleep because it's cold out and it was cozy in bed. And, anyway, I woke up and was screaming about how he had to get out the door. And my little boy was like, why do we always have to rush everywhere? Why are we always in a hurry? And he got so upset. And I was just like, you know what? They can stay home. Like, yeah, it's more convenient for me if they go to daycare, for sure. But why am I essentially punishing them for my failure to plan and to get my shit together?
Well, and isn't it interesting how it is often kind of that spiral down effect? It was like, oh, my kids were in such a good mood when they woke up. I maybe wasn't, or I feel overwhelmed or stressed because of something. But look, now it's trickled down to all of them, and I've put everybody pretty much in a bad mood in the house and stuff. So it's just recognizing those things, and it's, man, sometimes I have to look at, it's me, I'm my own worst enemy, and what am I teaching, what do I want it to be like? I mean, I think that's one thing I stress, especially when I'm talking or working with women. I run a Finding You Discovering It program, and it really works on just slowing down to recognize, hey, what's important to me, what are my values, what are my priorities? Because I think too often we're doing so many things that, wow, I just realized this isn't even something that interests me, or this doesn't fill my cup. Or when your kids get older and stuff too, it's like, man, what do we say yes to? What do we say no to? And if I don't know what's important to me and to us as a family, then I'm going to be saying yes to things that, man, they don't, it's a cultural thing, Well, everybody says 2-year-olds should be in gymnastics. Well, that seems a little ridiculous to me, right? Or whatever the case might be. And it's ironic too, because if anybody knows me or follows me, I run and gun. I mean, I really do. I love to travel. I love to always be doing something. Or, I mean, people will laugh because it's like, well, you're always doing something. You're always on the go. And I also have to tell them, you don't have to go like I do. Like, that's why we are all made different. And I think we get to comparing a little bit too much. And it's like, well, look how much she's doing. I should be doing more. And it's like, do you want to do more? And I have that conversation. I coach women and they're like, well, no, I'm actually really happy with, what's on our plate right now. Then why in the world would you try and add more? Just because you think your kids are going to fall behind, or they should be in sports, or you should be doing this and that. And I think all of those things tie into, I mean, it comes down to those behaviors and relationships, communication, everything ties together. And it's a lot of times comes down to, how are we leading at home? Because I think that trickles into business too. As an entrepreneur, it's, how do I want to run that ship as well? How do I want my employees seeing how I show up?
Well, and I think too, even as a coworker, when you work for someone else, like, I mean, yes, they're paying me, but why should they be getting a better version of me than my family is? Because, by the end of the day, I'm just done. And
I say that a lot. I mean, that's a reality. I mean, that's why people can rock it in the morning. I mean, that's why I can work out. I can eat a good breakfast. I can do all these things. But literally by the end of the day, our bandwidth, our mental brain, our capacity, our willpower, it does dwindle. I mean, it's not like that's a made up thing. It truly does by the end of the day. So sometimes I'll sit at my mailbox, which is maybe a half hour from our house, and I will just sit there and be like, hey, Callie, how do you want to show up to these kids? How do you want to show up when you get home? because that makes a huge difference, right? And I often say, why would I want the people that I do truly love the most to see the worst of me or to get the short end of the stick? And they don't deserve that. They've had a great fun day, and I don't want to be the one that comes home and ruins that for them because I'm overwhelmed or because I said yes to too much on my plate or didn't give myself enough white space throughout the day, whatever it might be. I mean, people need to recognize what their schedule looks like. And one of my favorite quotes is, I am where I am today because of the choices that I have made or I've allowed somebody else to make for me. And it's kind of like, wow, that's on me, everything that's on my schedule today. Or I said yes to somebody else because I felt like I should or whatever. And by the end of the day, it's like you realize, was that too much? Or hey, we're figuring this out. How can I kind of help control my emotions and where I want to be when I show up?
I think we also need to acknowledge too that our kids at the end of the day are also often not their best selves either.
It's the perfect storm.
The kid who, like stumbles off the school bus or who you pick up at the end of the day and you think like, okay, we're going to have to be gentle with this person because they might have had fun earlier, but they're also done. And school can be really challenging for a lot of our kids, and no matter what age or stage they're at. Like I look at my kids coming home from high school and think like some of the stories I hear, like they're dealing with a lot, like they're dealing with things that that I didn't have to when I was their age. And just to remember that they also need that time to unwind, and they haven't had a time in their day to let their guard down or feel like they're really themselves, because they've got to keep it together. You have to, you said before about not wanting to not be yourself, but we do put on a front. I'm not the same person in my house as I am out in public necessarily, or there are different people in my life who I you have different relationships with people, you approach them in different ways. And so having that mask come down and letting them also have home be a place where they can you know maybe not be their best selves sometimes. But that's hard as a parent to watch and to be patient through. Sometimes then you're like, yeah, you can't talk to me like that, but it's like, oh, what else did they have to go through?
I mean, it's that simple reality that they have to learn from us, that it goes back to that 50-50. I am not always going to be this perfect, wonderful, majestic, happy mother or business owner or anything. I mean, that's just a reality. And so, how do we talk about that? How do we, man, today was a hard day and that's why I'm crabby. And so I'm just going to go for a walk right now. You guys are making supper on your own tonight. And that's just, they're learning that from us then, instead of that, oh, I'm going to take this out on my husband or my kids or whatever.
Yeah, that's right. I'll start slamming some cupboard doors and someone will realize I need help setting the table. Like, okay, maybe I should use my words.
I feel like, too, Callie, I realized that my kids were really, really good this weekend about being very flexible about a lot of things. And that rewarding them by yelling about us running late really didn't seem like the best, like, you guys have been super patient, so to reward you, I'm going to require that you be patient even longer and louder with me first thing in the morning. Like, that does not seem like a very good reward.
If you have never read one of my favorite books, and this is kind of, it's focusing more on like overachievers or the fact that it seems like it's never enough. If you've ever had that mindset, which probably is a lot of people, it's always like the next thing. And The Gap and the Gain is one of my favorite books. And in it, they tell this story of, it was actually a woman who went to work that day, and it was like a brand new year, and they were setting new goals and like new numbers. We got to achieve this and achieve that. And the people on her team, her employees, finally one day were like, it's never enough for you. Like we hit all of our goals last year, and never once were you like, hey, great job, guys. Like there was no it's like, now we're just raising the bar for the new year. And she went home that night and she started getting mad at her kids because they didn't get enough done during the day or whatever. She was short. And her kids literally said to her, he's like, it's never enough for you, Mom. Like, we're never doing enough for you. And you know why that is? It's because you're never enough for yourself, is what he said to her. And she just had this huge aha moment of like, it's always the next thing. And there's a fine line. I tell people that I like to achieve too. I like to set goals. I like to chase down things and make things happen. And I can tell you, it's one of the most beneficial things I've learned in my life is to look back sometimes and measure how far I've come. because I'm always looking at what I missed it by. That can be every single day of what I fell short of, what I didn't accomplish, what went wrong, versus, holy, look, especially when it comes to this beef plant. Look what we've accomplished in this past year, what we've achieved, how far we've come. Look how much we've learned. And we'll a lot of times bypass that just to say, but it wasn't enough. We didn't hit the goal.
Right. And sometimes the goals that are measurable are not always the ones that are the most important, right? Like it's easy to look at the bank account or the bottom line and be like, that's the goal. But yeah, like, staff retention, relationships, increased, customers through the door. Those things are, somewhat measurable, but yeah, those things are more important sometimes, especially when you're looking at global markets that you can't control.
A lot of uncontrollables, yes.
Yes. Yeah. That's farming, right? Well, and parenting too. So this is backtracking a little bit in your life, but we often talk on this podcast to people about the time when they first became a parent because it's such a pivotal point in your life. So I was wondering what you reflect on when you think about the first time that you brought a little one home and the changes to your life and your relationship and what that time looked like for you.
It's funny to think back because, yeah, that was 13 years ago. I'm at the point where I'm kind of freaking out. Like, how could I have a high schooler? She'll be a freshman in high school this fall. But I think I was young. I got married at 22. I told my kids the other day, I'm like, that is way too young. But I'm like, well, I guess if it, and you're willing to make it work. But I think it's an interesting time. I actually recently I was speaking at an event, and it was for a whole bunch of women business owners. And I took the time and put together like a timeline of the past. I can't remember when I started it, probably when I graduated high school and then went to college, got my degree, got my first jobs, all these things. You get married, had kids, and I just had like the different business things that I had going on. And then when things would pivot and change and how you had to make some of those hard decisions. And it was fun just seeing where the kids would be sprinkled in, especially from the first one. Tyler was born in 2011 then. And I worked for a couple more years. I actually worked for extension. So I did 4-H, I did agriculture, I did all of those things within my home county for about 5 years. And I just think about how things changed and evolved. Evolved is probably one of my favorite words. When I start to get overwhelmed or stressed, I just think, and my husband is the one who said that to me originally. He said, Callie, just let it evolve. I mean, that doesn't mean sit on the couch because it's not going to evolve on its own, but you have to do it. Just let the cards play out. You've got the cards that you've been dealt. Now you just got to make the moves and keep doing it. And I think that's what we did with kids too, and how life changed, because I worked full time then. When I was pregnant with Kason, my second one, Tylee would have been 2, and I was still working for extension service. And I think for me personally, right, this is not everybody's story, and I need women to hear that instead of like, oh, well, geez, maybe that's what I should be doing, or I feel guilty because I didn't, or whatever. I decided to leave that very good job that I loved, and that was hard. So Tylee was 2, Kason was a brand new baby. And I still remember, I mean, I was helping on the farm and ranch then. I actually did some direct sales because that's that probably, I got to be doing something though in me, kind of for myself yet for my family. And I remember somebody stopped me in the grocery store just a couple months after having Kason. So 2-year-old and a brand new baby. And she said, how's it going? And I'm sure I was like, it's wild. It's insane, right? With little kids like that. And she said, that is the one regret I have, is not being home more with my kids when they were little. And it was kind of that sign, not saying I needed it, but it made me feel better that I didn't make the wrong decision. It's like, what in the world did you just do, Callie? And you don't get that back. I think there's a lot of things that you realize later in life you don't get back. There's some opportunities you don't get back, or you don't get to slow down time and be with your kids more when they're little, or whatever. Again, it goes back full circle. What are your priorities? What are your values? So I think that's something that we had to decide right off the bat is, hey, what's important to us? What do we want life to look like? Especially when you start adding little humans to the mix, and attempting to find, it's not a balance, but it's more like harmony is what I say, so that I can keep working, I can keep running businesses and doing all the things that I enjoy. I can help on the ranch as needed, and I can be with my kids. I can go to their sports, their activities, and play that role that is super important to me.
What are some of the ways that you're incorporating your kids now into the ranch and the business?
They are always with us. Unless they're in school. They do go to school, but they're home for the summer now, and it's funny. Sometimes they don't like to make the drive up to Williston, up to the butcher shop as much, but sometimes they're the ones making calls to. I made Tylee do that one time. She had to call all the ranchers and say, "Hey, reminder to bring your animals tomorrow. We're butchering and stuff." And she was like panicking, but it was so good because that's how they learn, right? She looked at me. I mean, kids don't really talk on phones nowadays. But I was like, you
I
use
mean,
this.
I admit I don't very much either.
I was like, this is a landline. You have to type in the numbers and
And if
say,
someone picks up and it's a real human and not an answering machine, you have to
I was like,
say hello.
here's your script. Here's what you say to them. And I mean, I just think that is a gift. They may not see that right now, but it is a gift, all these opportunities that they get to take with us. So whether they're coming up here or a lot of days too, depending on where I'm at or what I'm doing, they might be sitting in a tractor seating with CJ, or they're always working cattle with us, whether that's riding horse or sorting or going to brandings. Sometimes too, when it works out, they get to come with me to some of my speaking events, which is pretty fun. So just last week, it was state FFA convention here in North Dakota. So I was speaking at it. So Tylee came with me for 3 days, and we had the best time ever. I mean, we even stayed in the dorms at NDSU in Fargo. So we had a little bit of dorm life and everything there with us for everything. And I think the real perk too is they get to see the good and the bad, right? Just the reality that comes with us. They hear some of those morning and evening conversations like, hey, what's the plan? What's the schedule for today? What needs to get done at Yellowstone at the beef plant? And who's working cattle? Who's going to a branding tomorrow? And they just see it all played out right in front of them.
So I was looking at your Instagram, and I'm from an area where there are a handful of rodeos through the season, but there's not really a rodeo culture. Tell me about being the mom of someone who's involved in rodeo. Like, are you nervous all the time, or how does that feel?
It's funny. I go back and forth because I really like, I'm a very hard worker. I'm pretty driven. I'll be straightforward with people and tell them what needs to get done when I need to. And at the same time, I'm pretty chill. Like I really just am a go with the flow person. However, rodeo is, yeah, an interesting sport because I'm maybe that's as I get older, I'm just like, sometimes I sit there, and this is being the coach in me too. I'm like, this is fun, this is relaxing, things are going well. And the other side of my brain wants to be like, and in any single moment or second, something could go bad here, right? If a rope gets caught wrong on a horse, or they rear up, or they trip, and we're going 100 miles per hour. So we do have to laugh because yes, Kason loves to rodeo. We actually, that's why we're heading to Iowa in a couple of weeks for nationals. And he's just a little 11-year-old fifth grader, and he qualified. He loves to rope. However, he qualified in bareback riding. So, I mean, if that doesn't raise the anxiety a little bit, I don't know what does. But I guess that's why I personally have a lot of faith and prayer too. I mean, and believing there's, he loves it, then that's what we're going to chase and do, all this stuff.
So, Callie, maybe you can explain to me, and I say this as someone who enjoys a rodeo and such, but bareback horses make some sense to me. Why the hell do people ride bulls? I mean, because a horse throws you off and then walks away. A bull throws you off and then comes back to try to kill you. Like, what? What's the fun in that? Is this the reason there aren't female bull riders?
Oh, there probably are some somewhere.
I mean, I know there are a few, but there's some crazies in every bunch, and I say that with love. I do. But why?
Maybe that's the thing, right? Our my brain can't find the reason why to do that. No. And I think that's the funny thing, right? I mean, I've got one of Kason's really good friends. He rides bulls. I mean, he travels the country and rides little mini bucking bulls. One of our good friends, Leighton Woodbury, he's a bullfighter. So he would be able to answer. He probably has for interviews, like why, and he's the bullfighter, right? He's not riding them. He's trying to save their lives. In fact, I have a really funny video. So they use some bullfighters to help, like Kason. They actually, at his age, they don't ride bucking horses. They'll actually ride steers. And so they have the bullfighters there to help him out. And sure enough, Leighton grabbed Kaysen because his hand was kind of stuck in his bareback rigging. And he was kind of stuck. I mean, at one point he was pretty much upside down, and Leighton grabs him upside down off the steer. And I mean, it's funny, but it's not. It's funny when they're done and it's over. But yeah, I our brains are just a little bit different. And Kaysen does not do that. I will tell you, he doesn't ride bulls. Bucking horses is enough because, like you said, we ride horses. And if we're riding horses and chasing cattle, they might buck. So there's maybe my reasoning as to why bucking horses. Bulls, we're not riding them every day.
Yeah. It feels like one of those, like somebody sometime said, watch this. And then someone else had to try it too, to shoot, to prove that they could as well.
I have to say though, I think the bullfighters and rodeo clowns might actually be crazier than the bull riders, because I mean, at least the bull riders, like, people make movies about bull riders. Presumably, they get a lot of women. Presumably, there's a chance that they will make a lot of money.
They get big buckles.
Slapping clown makeup on your face and then willingly going and standing in front of the bulls is like the one place worse than starting out on top of the damn thing.
There is clearly some sort of dopamine release or thrill that there is. I know there is that they get, because here's the funny story. So Kaysen loves to rope. He's a very good little roper. And somebody asked the other day, they were congratulating him for qualifying in bareback riding to nationals. And I looked at Kaysen and I said, yeah, but you really like roping no more, don't you? You're really good at it. And he looked at me, he's like, I don't know. And I looked at him, I was like, wait a second, you're saying you like this rough stock stuff more than roping? He's like, yeah, I kind of do. And I'm like, I should be pulling you aside and having a conversation with you right now. And yeah, that was not supposed to be your answer. And you could just tell by his face, like, there's just a little thrill, the adrenaline rush that comes with it is pretty fun for him, apparently.
So other than rodeo, what are some of your biggest parenting challenges these days?
You know what's funny? I don't know if this is a real good answer, but honestly, when I think of the reality of what's on our plate and what we've got going and parenting challenging, sometimes it's making decisions on our best yes. And just deciding what to say yes to, because my kids the other day were complaining because there was probably 3 or 4 things coming up on a Saturday and they didn't know which one to say yes to. All fun things though. That's the problem, is we've got this activity or that activity or this birthday party or this branding we could go to, or all the things. And it's like, how do you decide what to say yes to? I mean, as silly as that sounds, I mean, that's a pretty good challenge to have, I think, of just, man, which way do we head, and are we all going together, or who's taking what kids where? And that's just something we've juggled for years, and we know we have to make decisions on.
And multiple kids, right? So you get pulled in, you get more invitations the more kids you have.
I like that, Calli, what you just said about the best yes, though, because I think it's hard to remember even as adults, and I'm sure it's even more so for kids, that it's so rare in life that one thing is obviously good and one thing is obviously not a good choice, and it's, there's only one or the other, and it's a clear choice. And really learning that, making a call about that.
And that's the thing, because there can be lots of good things, but man, what's our best yes for today? What are we saying yes to, and feeling good about that answer then?
I know my daughter yesterday went to play with her best little friend, and there was something she was going to miss out on, or thought she might miss out on, and she said something about, well, I really wanted to do XYZ, but this is even better. And I was just like, wow, look at you, like, not just losing your mind about how you were going to miss out on this if you didn't, if you did this other thing. Like,
and we dared to move, even an inch from where we were sitting when you weren't here. There was that object permanence that kids don't get for a while, right? It's like, what? I did something and you also did a thing while I was not present? No fair.
I actually exist simply in a stasis at all times when they are not here to see me.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I just freeze. What is a piece of parenting advice that you've gotten from someone or that you learned along the way that you would want to share with someone else?
One of the best advices I got probably, and this is when my kids were really little and I was home at that time, but I was also kind of doing direct sales, running a direct sales business. And one of the leaders in the company, she was one of my mentors. She had said to me, actually, she said, when those kids get home from school off the bus, put your work away. And it's funny, I was kind of like, well, yeah. I mean, you can see it either way, right? Like, well, why wouldn't I? My children are home. And at the same time, when you run businesses, it's like, no, I need to work 24/7 to keep up type thing. But we talked on that just a little bit earlier too of if I can even have the computer shut or the papers put away or the phone down when they walk off that bus and come up the stairs. And what's really fun is when I have time to bake some. If I've made some muffins or have a little treat set out for them, they're like, "Oh, what did you make?" I mean, they're just so excited because they're just like anybody else. They notice when somebody takes the time for them. It doesn't mean I always have to have food set out for them, but just the I am looking at them, I am engaged, and it's, hey, how was your day? What went good? What was wrong? Do you have anything? Do you have any homework? And just, hey, what's the plan now? And if I have to go back to work later, fine. But man, when those kids walk in the door, I work really hard if I am home to have that stuff put away and have conversation with them. And I probably think the follow up, which we talked about some earlier too, is best parenting advice is watch yourself as husband and wife or mom and dad. And what am I showcasing them? Am I showing them what a team should look like, or what I think they should look like? Or it's crazy to think when your kids are little, you're not always considering these things, but someday they're going to grow up and they might get married. And so, what do they think a marriage should look like? A good team, a mom and dad, and how do we show up? And am I showing them what I want, what I hope that they will have someday?
That is a good point.
So, one more challenge question. I assume that rodeo parenting comes with some serious laundry stains. Because, I mean, you are not only at both ends of livestock, but also on top and also then not on top.
And then ground into the dirt.
What laundry tips do you have for us? What's the hot take on?
You may not believe this, actually. I don't do my children's laundry. They, at a pretty young age, have done their own laundry. And another perk is have them wear the same outfit for like multiple days in a row. And then it doesn't really matter. I was gone. We were gone earlier or was it last week? Yeah, for a few days. And I got home, and this is my littlest, Lainey. And she said, I just love this outfit so much. She said, I have actually worn it for the past 3 days in a row. And that day would have been day 4 now that I'm home. And I was like, so do you think you should maybe change your clothes? And she's like, no, I just really love this outfit. And it's like, you know what? See, that is a thought I wouldn't have had. My thought is it's time to wash it then. Her thought is this is a favorite outfit. Why in the world would I change it?
Still good.
Well, and especially if she's wearing jeans. Jeans are just getting good after a couple days.
They were like bib jeans and just a shirt underneath it. And I did not make her change. So just so you know it. But no, that's probably I don't do my kids' laundry. They have to do it. So and wear the same outfit multiple days. That's my advice.
That's probably the best laundry advice we can give right there. Don't do it. Problem solved. All right, so we ask all of our guests if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
This is good and bad. Gardening. We have a fantastic garden. And by we, as in, I mean, it's at our place, it's on our ranch, but my mom and dad pretty much manhandle it. So, and my kids, it is their little project. So if it's legal to go pull, which is what I do. I mean, I thank them all the time for planting this garden. It has everything and anything in it, and it's beautiful. And I just get to go pick out of it most of the time. So I could probably go pull some vegetables, enter them in the fair, and do pretty decent.
Would you have to share your winnings, do you think?
No, nope, because that's how nice they are. My kids, they would ask, like, but we planted it, we did this.
Yeah. But then you entered it, you got it there, yeah. Everyone makes a contribution. So we will go ahead and move into our cussing and discussing segment. If you're a listener and want to submit yours, you can use our SpeakPipe or our email to submit yours. Katie, what are you cussing and or discussing this week?
Well, speaking of county fairs, our county fair opens this weekend, and I love taking my kids to stuff. We love taking them to local events. We love going places, and yes, I know there are more economical ways to do these things. A, you have to be more organized, and B, you have to be less food motivated than our family is. Um, no homemade ham sandwich is gonna cut it when there's cotton candy on the menu, okay? Like, let's just face it.
There's a time and place for a picnic, but the county fair is not one of them.
Okay, can we could talk on this for a while because God bless the families. Like a lot of us camp at the county fair, and a lot of them have their meals for throughout the week.
Oh, they got the crock pots running and yeah.
Oh yes, yes, and I'm like, if I do something like that, they won't eat it anyways because there's fair. I mean, some of their favorite things are there, so if it's less stressful and less time on me, I'm not preparing a single thing for during the fair. You can go buy it, splurge.
And it's not even like I love fair food. I am the last one to have a problem with fair food. But that even momentary interruption of proper adulting in your brain where you're like, can my kid really chase a funnel cake with the slushy? It's 9:30 in the morning. Like, and then you start adding up how much money you've spent, and it's like this, and it's a very privileged place to come from, is ridiculous to even like. There ought to be some way to just shut that part of your brain off at the gate. Like, I'm just going to check my brain right here. I'll pick it up when we leave. I will worry about the consequences of that second Slurpee later, at the same time that I try and scrub all this crap off my kid's face. The.
And then send them on a spinny ride.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. The county fair is just not the place for having to worry about money or nutritional value.
Sometimes the consequences with the spinny ride are related to, the funnel cake at 9 in the morning, but that was their choice, right?
My kids are just getting to the spinny ride age, so I think we're just about to reach that.
Right, yeah. Start at the rides, end at the food.
Yep. All right, Callie, what do you have to cuss and discuss today?
Okay, well, this is going to be the most random thing, but I thought about it and it bothers me and it kind of wastes my time. I literally kind of gasp with excitement when it goes the right way, and it's this. When I go into a bathroom, like, uh-oh, where's she going with this? And I wash my hands, and there's the paper towel things, and a lot of times they're automatic now, of course, that the paper towel comes. And nothing drives me more nuts than when, like, only a few inches of paper towel comes out. Because then you got to wait, and it's like got to fall asleep and wake back up, and you have to wave your hand again for more paper towel to come out, because clearly the little bit that came out is not enough to dry my hands.
Yeah, because it's not absorbent anyway. Those paper towels are, I don't know what they're made of, but it's not an absorbent fiber.
So you have to do it 2 or 3 times to get enough. And I literally just kind of gasped with excitement when I wave my hand under it once, and like a good foot and a half of paper towel comes out, and I'm like, I look around the bathroom smiling, like, does everybody else see this? Like a decent amount of paper. Now I can just swipe that, dry my hands, and exit instead of like trying to wave my hands and get more paper towel. I don't know why, but I think about that all the time. And now you guys all will as well when you go into a bathroom and it's like, man, was this enough paper towel for Callie, or do I need to swipe my hand again and get more?
How much? Yeah, how much is too much? I am always impressed with the difference in the velocity of the hand dryers. You've got some that I think are going to blast the skin right off my body, and others it's like, what even is this? Like my hair dryer could do better than this little faint wind. And I never know going in, like, what part is going to be automated. Like, are the sinks going to be automated? Is the soap? What do I actually have to press? What automation is going to work? Or the sinks where it like hits the bottom with such force that then you get like the shower all over you.
I mean, I can't be the only one that has set my purse or coat on the counter and all of a sudden soap has fallen on it. It's like, good Lord. I mean, we can do something ourselves nowadays.
No, the robots are everywhere, but not predictably, because then in the same bathroom with the automated soaps, you might have to like crank the towels out because who knows?
I feel like the only thing that is more obnoxious at that point, Callie, is, I've been traveling some recently, when you either the distance between the stall door and the toilet is such that you have to like climb over the toilet to clear the door, or you get in there and there's nowhere to hang your bag, especially in an airport. Like, do we not assume that people have items with them?
There's a newer airport here in Williston, and I mean, I haven't done it, but I would like to film the bathroom stall because I'm just like, there is so much. I mean, they thought it through, plain and simple. They thought it through that I will have luggage, I will have bags, I need space, and it's stunning stalls.
Yeah, I was in an airport the one time where it was like, yes, there was room to bring your carry-on in, which because you're traveling by yourself, everyone's got a carry-on now because you don't want to check your bags. So yeah, you have to have room for my luggage to be in here with me because otherwise I'm going to get turned away at security because I lost sight of my luggage. It wasn't on my lap while I was in the bathroom.
I will say the Buffalo, New York airport I flew out of recently, and not only do they have visiting therapy dogs, they have rocking chairs in all the terminals. So I sat there in my rocking chair and I ate a Tim Hortons donut and I petted somebody else's dog, and it was like made my trip. They could have had any kind of bathroom and I would not have cared because they should be able to give awards for these things. Like, to hell with the Oscars. Let's give awards for decent airport bathroom.
I'm sure there's a rating online somewhere. Top airport bathrooms. The travelers, they know.
Yep. All right, Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
I'm going to cuss my eternal struggle between the fact that I like having flower beds and nice things around my house and around the barn. We have some planters and all that kind of stuff. But the fact that inevitably at some point I forget about some of the locations of those flower beds. And then we have a second driveway where the milk truck comes in and where we ask that most of the farm traffic go in because our main house driveway has lots of overhanging trees. So then I went in the farm driveway the other day and I was like, oh, that's a flower bed that I used to maintain when the kids were little and we were out in the backyard more. We had like a play yard that's kind of behind the house, but there isn't a direct access from our home into that yard. It was fenced separately, to keep people safe from farm equipment. And yeah, there's a flower bed out there that has some flowers that are really doing their best to survive, but I actually need to go back there and attack the grass because, or maybe I might just give up on that one and move those guys out. But it's also at that point in the year where they probably won't survive if I move them. So maybe we'll just see what lasts till fall. And then I'll figure that out again later, but it wasn't looking nearly as pretty as it used to when I was spending many hours a day in the back play yard.
We just planted a bunch of our stuff recently, got flowers, because I always say flowers just make a person happy. They are so pretty. However, next week is our county fair the whole week. Then we go straight to Iowa for a week. Then it's 4th of July. I mean, and I'm kind of like, who's going to care for all of these plants, I wonder, and hopefully I can call in reinforcement with my mother or somebody and they'll get watered. But yeah, I had to really think.
Yeah, a lot of these are perennials, and so they're pretty good to stay alive. But yeah, I always think that hanging baskets are going to be the thing, and they really need a lot of attention. So they don't always make it through the summer, especially being underneath a roof line. They have no chance because they really depend on me. So thank you so much, Calli, for joining us today. Where can people find you online if they want to find out about you as a speaker or more about your farm or the processing facility or any of the things you're keeping yourself busy with?
Yes, lots of places. I mean, I always say if you can find social media and type in my name, they can find me probably most anywhere. Yellowstone River Beef is the name of our processing plant, but they can also go to my website and find a lot of things. www.callithorne.com. And I always say no E on Calli, E on Thorne. So they can find me there, though.
There you go. 1 E, not 2. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great to meet you.
You guys as well. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.